Welcome, traveler. Tonight we drift into We Loved Them Like Brothers. Then They Burned Earth. You're already here, aren't you? The hum under your boots, the soft, recycled air hissing past the vents, a million particles of dust and loss floating just outside the viewport. The orbital ring used to shine. Now it creaks like an old bone ship left too long in vacuum. You drift along its broken spine, watching shattered habitats spin like dead clock hands. The Earth below? Still there, technically. But look too long, and you'll start to wonder if the term planet should still apply. Let's be honest, you'd probably get vaporized within 5 minutes if this weren't just a bedtime story. Good news, you're only here in spirit. No radiation burns, no oxygen tanks, no heartbreak lodged like a splinter behind your ribs. If you end up liking this quiet little corner of the galaxy, feel free to subscribe and leave a like, but only if it genuinely makes your evening better. Tell me where and when you're listening from. I always love seeing the spread across the stars and time zones. Now, lower the lights, maybe let a soft fan hum in the background, and let's begin the drift into tonight's quiet orbit. You arrive at the remains of Earth's orbital halo, a graveyard of tech and trust. Station Sigma 3A was once a refueling platform, now a scorched lattice of carbon steel and torn docking cables. The beacon still flashes out of habit more than hope. It blinks the same pattern it's blinked for 72 years. Home, safe, land. But the message is a lie. Your mag boots click onto a derelict corridor wall. Gravity's long gone, and so is any concept of down. The rails are warped from thermal shocks, maybe even orbital bombardment. Hard to tell these days. You pass a bent placard with the Yalari word for sanctuary, though it's missing half its strokes. You wonder if the translation was always wrong. A small maintenance drone drifts past, red LED blinking, still alive, still trying. It hums something like a tune, 2 notes, over and over. You feel it buzz faintly through the soles of your boots. Somewhere in that little robot's memory banks is a cleaning schedule and a list of rooms that no longer exist. Funny thing, no one's figured out who turned the orbital defense platforms outward. Some say it was automated response to an internal threat. Others insist it was sabotage. There are rumors of a Yalari-designed override embedded in Earth's defense AI. Of course, that's a convenient scapegoat. Galactic historians still argue whether we gave the override voluntarily during peace talks, or if it was slipped in during a firmware patch. You reach the viewing deck, or rather, what's left of it. The glass is gone, blown out by heat, or impact, but the frame remains, blackened and buckled. You float forward, nose to the void, and Earth fills your vision. She's bruised. Vast swaths of the Pacific boil under static storms. The continents, what's left, are gray scars beneath. Swirling ash, no green, no blue, no twinkling city grids, just a silent wound spinning through the dark. You remember where the ISS used to be. The first whisper of human spaceflight. Now, not even debris. Just a clean gap, like someone carefully erased that part of history. Behind you, a proximity chime, echoes weakly. Probably just space junk. Or one of the automated scavenger drones still looking for salvage even after everyone gave up hope. But part of you, some feral, irrational part, wonders if someone else is here. Watching. Waiting. Maybe another human. Maybe not. You click open a side panel and plug in your neural tap. The deck lights flicker. A soft buzz prickles your spine, followed by an old startup chime you haven't heard since the war. It's almost enough to make you laugh. Through the connection, you access the deck's memory logs. Most are corrupted, scorched with radiation or time, but a few fragments remain. Audio files, a video loop. One clip shows a celebration, a Yalari, diplomat and a human technician raising glasses of synthetic wine. Laughter, applause, a song you almost remember. Someone shouts, "To the next 100 years." The irony stings like static. Another file is less cheerful. Grainy footage, emergency light strobing, a young woman yelling, voice lost in distortion. Her hand slams the control panel. but nothing happens. Behind her, a viewport shows Earth mid-flare, plasma storms arcing across the atmosphere. Says one last word, but the file cuts out before you can hear it. Probably for the best. Some argue Earth was doomed long before the betrayal. Climate collapse, political entropy, too many ideologies playing tug-of-war with one fragile biosphere. But that was our chaos to fix. It wasn't supposed to end in fire from friends. You unplug, the back of your skull tingling from residual static. The corridor behind you is darker now. Even the emergency lighting seems tired. You drift down, the central shaft passing more ruins. Personal quarters, labs, a garden dome where only skeletal branches remain. On one wall, someone once painted a mural. A Yalari and a human holding hands in front of a blazing star. A childlike scrawl beneath reads, "We share the light." You linger on that image longer than you mean to. Because back then, it did feel like sharing, like wonder, like we'd found someone else in the dark and they'd smiled first. But up here, surrounded by ghosts, that smile feels like the first blade drawn. You float away from the mural slowly, as if pulling free from a web spun by memory. The mural's colors are faded, sure, but the intention still burns beneath the decay, naive and painful in equal measure. The Ilari had no mouths, not in the human sense, but they smiled with light. Bioluminescent pulses along their cheek ridges, glowing arcs across their thorax, rhythmic flashes that mapped emotion better than any translator chip. The first time you saw one smile at you, it felt like being invited into a sunrise. Back then, Earth was still whole, cities gleamed, oceans hadn't boiled. Governments bickered, yes, but under that was a quiet hum of hope. You were there, on the science vessel Vireo, when the signal arrived. Not the generic noise that SETI scientists had been parsing for decades. This one was structured, tonal patterns, too complex to be random, and woven into those harmonics was something unmistakable. Math, geometry, a self-portrait in frequency. The Hilari came through the wound gate 3 years later, a tear in the void they claimed they hadn't made, only used. Still no one knows what birthed it, some ancient machine buried in space-time perhaps. Some say the gate was already there and the Ilari just waited for someone else to open it. From the other side, they didn't come armed. No warships, no demands, no threats. Just a delegation on a shimmering disk the size of a stadium. It hovered in high orbit for 7 days, silent before the first light burst transmitted a greeting. You were in the diplomatic room on Luna Base when the first Ilari stepped forward. You remember the way it moved, fluid and slow, like swimming, through syrup. Its translator unit floated above its shoulder, a living AI with wings of cascading letters. It pulsed once, then again, and then came the words, clear as a bell. "We see you, brothers. Let us not be strangers." Some humans laughed, others cried. You remember squeezing the edge of your console so hard your knuckles turned white. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to feel, not cold or clinical. This was familiar. The weeks that followed were a blur. Media called it the second dawn. The Yalari shared technology, energy coils that ran for centuries, metal that healed. When cracked, music that mapped emotions. In return, we gave them art, language, coffee. Some historians still debate whether it was Shakespeare or espresso that truly cemented the alliance. Within months, joint projects formed. The terraforming accord allowed humans and Yalari to reshape moons together. The Lagrange Initiative launched mobile universities into deep space. And then there was Project Kinseed, an idea that once felt radical. Cultural and biological exchange. You volunteered. You met Eller, your assigned Yalari partner, aboard the Kinseed Ark. She, or as close to she, as pronouns can map across. Species was an atmospheric engineer. Elegant, analytical, and endlessly amused by Earth slang. You taught her how to say cool and no way, and she taught you to hum through your teeth in specific frequencies to mimic Yalari song. You shared quarters, shared stories. One night, she asked what love meant. Not biologically, Not chemically, but the human shape of it. You didn't have a good answer. You still don't. But she blinked a slow pulse across her cheek and said, "That sounds like a useful failure." And it was love in a way. Not romantic, not exactly. But something just as intimate, like discovering a mirror that reflected what humanity could be, if it leaned into wonder instead of fear. You both watched the birth of the first hybrid child. Genetically human, but with soft biolights along the skin. Bred in a lab, yes, but celebrated like the return of a star thought, long dead. The media called her Hope. Ilari named her Keshen, which roughly translated to the blooming that follows winter. She was raised on Titan. You remember attending her third solar celebration, like a birthday, but marked by orbital rhythm instead of Gregorian calendars. The Ilari built her a sky dome filled with reactive clouds that shimmered to the sound of her laughter. You've never heard a sound like that since. Back then it felt impossible that any of this could fracture, that Earth could ever burn, that the word brother would curdle into an epithet. But hindsight is a cruel lens. Even now, voices echo across the galactic net. Analysts, survivors, conspiracy theorists, all debating the same question. Was it real? The friendships, the laughter, the shared science and celebrations. Was it genuine connection? Or were we just an experiment in cooperation, doomed to fail from the beginning? Some believe the Ilari were split internally, that what we saw was only one faction, while others lurked in silence, disapproving. Others argue that humans were never the target at all, that Earth was just collateral in a conflict older and wider than we ever understood. You remember the moment the fracture began? Not with violence, not yet. Just a strange silence on the Kinseed channel. You tried to hail Eller. No response. Her ID pinged once, brief like a breath held too long, and then vanished. You checked the logs later. She'd transmitted a message seconds before blackout. If they ask you to choose, choose doubt. You still don't know what that meant. But you carry it with you, tucked behind your molars like a ghost of a tooth. You float now past another broken satellite. It was once a music broadcaster, Solwave 1, still faintly emitting static. You pick up the signal, out of habit more than hope, and catch a fragment of an old Earth song. Sinatra. Fly me to the moon. You almost smile. Somewhere in the wreckage, Eller's laughter is still trapped in the carbon logs. Somewhere, Hope's footprints are still embedded in Titan dust. And somewhere maybe the truth is hiding, curled up inside a moment when we believed in brothers. You drift downward through gravity that isn't gravity, just centrifugal mimicry from a failing spin module on what's left of the joint orbit habitat. Below you, the corridor opens into a dome, one of the few still sealed. You pass through. The airlock and the stale hiss of old atmosphere greets your ears like an awkward memory. Inside the dome, wild vines slither along the floor. They're not native to Earth or Ilari worlds. These are fusion-grown, spliced flora engineered to grow fast and adapt faster. Back when the joint terraforming core was just getting started, someone thought these vines could anchor breathable ecosystems on Europa. Spoiler, they didn't. But they made a hell of a salad. The air smells like wilted basil and thyme. This was where it really happened. The trust, the laughter, the shared meals and botched translation jokes. You can still hear echoes of the early years when engineers like you and Ilari like Eller shared bunk rotations, oxygen rations, and dumb bets on who could recalibrate grav tethers faster. The Ilari always won. They didn't have bones to slow them down. Back then, the idea was simple. Build together. You and Eller led the terraforming core for Gliese 4, a dry planet full of promise and rust-colored sandstorms. The first time you stepped onto its surface, it felt like walking across an unfinished sentence. The work was brutal. Dry atmospheres, subsurface ammonia pockets, a sun that couldn't decide if it wanted to burn or freeze. But every time you sent a new biome pod down, Eller would hum a celebratory pulse and light up a soft teal, the Ilari equivalent of pride. You started doing it too. The humans called it blue-cheeking. Some people even got tattoos of the color. And then came the children. Not hybrids, not test tube concepts. Real second-generation colonies of humans and Ilari growing up side by side. You met one boy, Milo, who could whistle and hum in the Ilari's harmonic range. He liked building weird wind instruments from mining scrap. He said the wind talked better that way. Some records show that Milo died later on Trappist-E, when a rogue data worm corrupted a life support AI, but others say he lived. Moved to a quiet moon, still builds instruments no one else can hear. Galactic historians still argue whether the ghost concerts of Europa are him, or just a repeating glitch in the terraformers' auditory logs. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. You remember Eller's proposal for shared governance. 1 vote human, 1 vote Ilari on every planetary initiative. It caused chaos on Earth. Nations that hadn't agreed on breakfast in decades suddenly united in suspicion. What if they outnumber us? Someone asked. What if their memory runs deeper than our trust? The Ilari didn't understand the backlash. You give voice to children, Eller had once said. Why not to your friends? You'd shrugged. Children grow up. And perhaps that was the problem. We weren't ready to grow up, not like them. Still, joint cities flourished. The orbitals around Tau Ceti were a marvel of mixed architecture, flowing lines of Ilari bioceramic woven into human metal. Food grew in vertical forests, water cycled through living filtration routes, and on the weekends, karaoke, bad karaoke. You once heard a Ilari attempt Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody. Still the best thing you've ever heard screamed through 3 harmonic channels. The jokes weren't just jokes, they were glue. Humanity's gift to the stars might have been laughter, if not resilience. The Ilari tried to reciprocate. Their humor was interpretive, a lot of slime-based physical comedy. You learned to laugh anyway. Some still believe this golden period was real, a true alliance, not a facade, not bait. Others look back now and see a pattern, that the projects the Ilari chose, Glycephori, Tau Ceti, Titan, were all rich in specific isotopes, that they steered us away from volatile sectors but hoarded the unstable minerals, that their music had been used in ancient conflicts to disrupt neural signaling. But those are only theories, right? And even if they did plan something, why wait so long? Why build dreams only to burn them? You spot a blackened plaque near the biodome's control hub, half melted but the words still shimmer faintly beneath the soot. We dreamed of 1 sky. We built 2. You sit for a moment in the brittle grass. Let your boots sink a little into synthetic soil. The stars through the cracked dome above are crooked now, skewed by gravitational shifts and orbital debris. Still beautiful, though. There's a theory, one you've never fully believed, that the Ilari don't experience time the way we do. That for them partnerships are just pauses between greater symphonies. That even their affection has an expiration encoded in wavelengths too long for us to hear. If that's true, then maybe they did love us. Briefly. In their way. Or maybe we're always just a chord in a much older song. The biodome's power sputters. Lights blink once. A final breath. Then darkness. You watch it go like you'd watch an old friend fall asleep. And for a moment, despite everything, despite Earth's broken bones and burnt skies, you remember what it felt like to believe. You step back into vacuum through the decaying outer hatch, your breath fogging inside the helmet even though you're only here in story. The stars don't judge, but the silence feels heavier now, denser, as if the void itself remembers what happened at Leuten's Gate. That fracture, that was the beginning of the end, even if no one wanted to call it that. Not at the time. It started as so many things do with a rock, more precisely with what was under a rock. The Leuten Belt, just outside the system's frost line, was home to a dense field of planetoids. Prime mining territory, most of it, had been split according to the Unity allocation protocols. Humans got Sector 6, Ilari Sector 8, Shared Ops in 7, Neutral Zone in between. In theory. But you know how theory goes. A human mining freighter named Perihelion Blue disappeared. During a routine extract run into Sector 7, At first, no alarms, just a blip. Signals went fuzzy all the time out there. Ion storms, particle echoes, digital ghosts. It wasn't a safe neighborhood. Then the distress call surfaced, not on human channels, not through Terran command, but via an encrypted Ilari burst intercepted by a hobbyist array back on Ganymede. And the voice in the recording? Human. Panicked. Dying. You heard it once, just once. That was enough. They said it was safe. We trusted. Don't let them. Static. The burst transmission contained embedded coordinates, ones that placed the perihelion blue far within Ilari territory. Not by accident. You were in the debrief on Ceres Prime. The room was cold. Not by design, just bad circulation. People forget to maintain comfort systems when trust fails. Eller wasn't there. She'd already vanished. You checked her signal archive again just in case. Still nothing. Just the message. If they ask you to choose, choose doubt. Some of the Ilari delegation denied knowledge of the ship, said there was no record of any human vessel crossing into Sector 8. Others claimed the recording was fabricated. Echo propaganda, they called it. Glitches seeded by dissenters. But one Ilari, an older diplomat with silver-blue luminescence, stayed quiet the entire meeting. You caught him watching the projection, with something unreadable in his gaze. Something close to mourning. The next day, he self-immolated inside his quarters using a Ilari energy loop. No explanation, just a final pulse embedded in the wall. We were not all in harmony. After that, things spiraled. Earth recalled its ambassadors. The Ilari pulled their terraforming. Corps from Titan. Shared projects halted. Colonies started locking down their atmospheric filters, just in case. Human children stopped humming in harmonic frequencies. Schools reverted to unilingual instruction. You heard people whisper again. What if it was never real? Funny thing. About humanity. We're fast to love, but faster to fear. A year after the perihelion incident, human security forces boarded a Ilari resource station at Leuten's Gate under the guise of search and rescue. What they found, or planted depending on whose version you believe, was a data core. Inside it were logs, scrambled but undeniable, showing that the Ilari had been cataloging human neural profiles, mood patterns, behavioral algorithms. Some files even showed extrapolated responses to crisis scenarios. Was it surveillance, preparation, or something older and deeper? Some theorists say the Ilari were trying to understand us, to predict us, maybe even protect us. Others? They called it grooming. No one knows who fired the first shot, but the orbital footage shows a Ilari bioscout vessel spiraling into the Leuten sun, trailing plasma like a comet. Seconds later, a human cruiser exploded from within. That was the last moment either side could pretend this was anything less than war. You still keep the coin. It's in your suit's inner pocket, just a cheap alloy token from the Leuten Welcome Dome, back when it was a hub for trade and transit. One side has Earth's sigil, the other, the Ilari spiral. You flip it now, purely out of habit. It clinks against your glove and floats mid-air, always lands edge first. Some say the war was inevitable, that the alliance was a mirage stretched too thin across the vacuum. That species so different, so alien, couldn't ever truly bind. Others argue it wasn't war, not really, just the universe correcting a mistake. A few radicals say Leuten was orchestrated by a third party older than both of us, something that feared what humans and Ilari might become together. There's even a theory, wild and mostly laughed off, that Eller herself was a seed agent, sent to guide you, manipulate you, that her bond with you was calculated, part of a long-term simulation. But then again, if she was using you, why warn you to doubt? Why vanish before the spiral fell? Why say goodbye at all? You reach a floating buoy marker, half-charred, still blinking. A proximity ping echoes off your helmet. A voice filter kicks in from your receiver, a child's voice warped by time. This was not the song we meant to sing. You let the signal loop. One more verse in a melody that started in harmony and fell apart somewhere between two suns and a scream. The buoy signal fades behind you, swallowed by distance and interference. You don't turn back. There's nothing behind you now except ghosts, and they tend to follow whether you look or not. Ahead lies the remains of the Atrium Concord, a once floating embassy station that drifted between systems like a traveling olive branch. It was designed to look like both a flower and a spine. Ilari aesthetic, of course. Humans called it the glass bloom. You just called it home for 3 years. The docking clamps greet you like folded fingers. The entry light is still blinking. Somehow. The Ilari always did design with redundancy. Inside, the walls still hum with ambient resonance, tuned to a frequency meant to calm the limbic system. Most humans didn't even notice it. But you always did. It made your dreams warmer, like old Earth jazz on a rainy night. You float down, the corridor where Earth and Ilari leaders once walked barefoot together, symbolic, they said, to feel the ship beneath them. That's when the treaties were still being signed, the talks that birthed the interstellar concord of kinship. Gigranti. Altiu, everyone just called it the kin accord. You were there the day it passed. Eller, too. You remember the ceremony? Suspended in microgravity, light refracting through glass-like panels overhead, scattering 1,000 tiny suns around the room. Humans wore ceremonial cobalt robes. The Ilari just shimmered, their patterns flickering. In unified rhythm like applause, there was music, human and Ilari both, spliced into a harmony no AI had ever managed to replicate. One historian called it the closest we've come to worship in the stars. They signed it with ink and light. Your name still etched on the data scroll, alongside Eller's. You were liaison class, not military, not command. But important. Enough. Trusted enough. The wine flowed after. Synthetic, sure, but aged well. A hybrid vintage brewed in Martian vineyards and infused with trace minerals the Ilari used to strengthen memory. Some said the drink helped them relive entire days with perfect clarity. Later, of course, they'd say the wine was poison. The scandal broke quietly. No big announcement. Just a leaked med file from a Terran ambassador's autopsy. Trace compounds. In his neural tissue. Compounds only found in that wine. The story mutated. Maybe the compounds weren't fatal, but manipulative. Maybe the Ilari could use it to rewrite memory, steer emotion. Some researchers noted that humans who drank it showed heightened receptivity to Ilari suggestions. Suddenly, that beautiful ceremony began to look like a Trojan horse. The kin accord fell under suspicion. Entire systems called for repeal. You still remember the bottle. You drank half of it. So did Eller. She laughed after, said it made her glow like bioluminescent plankton. She called the feeling joy-colored. You didn't feel manipulated, just connected. As if the world had finally taken a breath after holding it for centuries. The Ilari denied everything, of course. Claimed the compound was naturally occurring, that it wasn't engineered, that the humans who had adverse reactions were rare cases. Some humans believed them, others screamed for blood. On the Atrium Concord, protests began in silence, people standing in hallways not speaking, a gesture the Ilari understood all too well. Then came noise, demands, finally the first attack, a data pulse that disabled the central translation AI for 27 minutes, long enough for chaos. 2 died that day. Not from weapons, but from misunderstanding. A human security guard panicked when a Ilari reached for him, probably to help, and struck him with a shock baton. The Ilari's bioluminescence went critical. The explosion breached a pressure seal. You remember patching it with your own emergency foam. You remember holding the guard's hand while he bled into vacuum through a fractured suit. His last words were, "Tell them I didn't mean to," but the Ilari didn't wait. Within hours, their delegation evacuated. LR among them. No warning, no farewell. Just a final message pinged to your private channel. It was never the wine. It was fear. Yours. Ours. The Concord drifted in silence after that. The governments pretended it still mattered, kept it staffed, dimly lit, as if hope were something that could be propped up like an old banner. But slowly, it emptied. And now, here you are, Alone again, walking the halls where unity once echoed. The council chamber still stands. The chairs are dusty. The scroll still hangs in its glass case, cracked but legible. Your name glows faintly when you touch it. You wonder if Eller's does too. There's an inscription at the base of the scroll in both languages. May this kinship outlast our fear. Some galactic archivists argue that the wine wasn't the turning point at all, that the data logs surrounding the perihelion incident were already circulating weeks before the kin accord was ratified. That maybe, just maybe, the wine scandal was manufactured to distract from something deeper. And if so, who planted the seed? As you leave the chamber, the resonance hum shifts slightly. Minor key. Sadder, like a song remembering its last note. You glance back one more time. The chairs. The scroll. The cracked light. And the ghost of a promise still flickering in air recycled too many times. Outside the atrium concord, the stars feel colder. There's a stretch of space the maps used to call Delta Verge 6, a region too narrow for ships to bother with and too far from any trade spine to be patrolled. But you know it by another name, the Hollowfold. Because out here the stars seem to lean away from each other like they're making room for something they don't want to touch. The signal came from here. Not a message. Not at first. Just a pulse. Faint. Rhythmic. Repeating every 7 hours. You were one of the few who noticed. It didn't hit standard monitoring arrays. The frequency was buried in the harmonics of abandoned lunar comms. The kind of thing only someone like you, someone listening for ghosts, would catch. You borrowed a scout ship, unofficially. They called it derelict inventory. You called it mine for the next 2 days. The hull was pocked with micrometeorite scars, but the long-range sensors still worked. And it had an old neural jack, the kind Eller used. To call brave and very dumb, it took you 37 hours to triangulate the source. An unlisted moon base, not on any human registry, not Ilari either, built into the shadow side of a rock with no name. Its surface was scarred with impact craters, but beneath the dust, you found structure, steel and stone, heat signatures buried under layers of interference. You docked manually. No AI would touch it. Something in the signal made them hesitate, like instinct if machines had instinct. The moment your boot hit the threshold, the interior light snapped on. Not motion sensor, recognitional, it knew you. You walked through halls that felt familiar, in shape but alien in purpose, like someone built it while trying to remember a dream of Earth. The angles were just slightly wrong. The walls hummed too quietly. No markings, no signage, just silence, and that pulse beneath your skin. Then you found the console. It was buried in what might have once been a med bay, a black cylinder on a pedestal slick with age. Your neural tap didn't work, but your voice did. Play the last transmission. The cylinder didn't light up. It just spoke, directly into your head, bypassing your ears entirely. The language was yours, but the syntax was wrong. Too precise. Like someone speaking from a textbook printed 3 centuries ago. And the voice, human.female. Panicked, but speaking in Ilari rhythmic cadence. This is Technician Lyra Khan, Terran Code ID 802 Blue. I'm broadcasting from within Facility Theta Zero. This is not a drill, I repeat, not a drill. You sat very still. We have confirmed the signal to be of hybrid origin. Language base is human Ilari, but it's older. Pre-contact structure, but with encrypted layers we cannot decode. AI, pause. Then, we believe this message predates the Alliance, possibly by centuries, possibly before Earth knew the stars. You remember the way your heartbeat slipped when she said that? A stutter in your ribs. Because that wasn't just a data anomaly. That was a rewriting of everything. The transmission continued. The message warns of recursion, of mimicry, that we were not the first iteration of this kinship experiment, that it's happened before, and then, they always end the same way, with one species burning. The transmission cuts off, No explosion, no scream, just a sudden stop. Like the story ran out of time. You stayed in that room for 2 hours, not moving, not breathing too hard, trying to decide if you believed any of it. Because if it was true, if that signal really came before the Ilari arrived, then the whole story changes. The first contact wasn't first. The alliance wasn't new. It was a pattern. And humanity? Just the latest variable. Some say the base was built by the Ilari. Others think it was built by humans, seeded by whispers and dreams, guided by unknown hands. There's even a theory that Earth's obsession with aliens, centuries of fiction, abductions, lights in the sky, was a kind of neural residue from before. A preloaded memory. Or a warning. Galactic historians still argue whether the signal was real. Most dismiss it as psychological breakdown, deep space paranoia. But you've heard her voice, Lyra Khan. You even looked her up. Born on Ganymede, enrolled in the terraforming corps, disappeared 30 years before first contact. 30. That moon base was scrubbed shortly after you reported it. The official logs say it was destroyed in a micrometeorite strike. But you still have the audio. You play it sometimes on nights when space feels too quiet. Hybrid origin. Pre-contact structure. They always end the same way, and in the shadows of your mind you hear Eller's voice too. That last message. If they ask you to choose doubt. You don't know what facility Theta Zero was, or who built it, or who wanted it hidden. But as your ship drifts silently past the moon that no longer shows up on maps, you understand one thing clearly. Whatever game this was, it didn't start with you, and it doesn't end here. The quiet that follows the signal is different than before. Not the kind of silence you expect from deep space. This one feels like waiting, like the galaxy is holding its breath. And maybe it should be, because you're no longer chasing a betrayal. You're chasing a question too large to answer. You log the coordinates of Facility Theta Zero again, even though you know they'll be wiped by your ship's auto-sanitization protocols when you dock next. It doesn't matter. You've written them down in places no AI can reach, scratched into memory, tucked behind reflexes. You leave the moon base, but not the truth you found there. Your next stop is Enceladus. Not because it's warm or welcoming, it's neither, but because the old Ilari archive is still buried beneath its southern ridge, wedged inside a fractured ice chamber no one's dared to thaw for decades. Most people think it collapsed during the final evacuation of the Saturn moons. But you know better. The Ilari called it Nar's memory, a library that didn't store data so much as impressions, emotions, memories. Each archive pod was grown organically, tuned to respond, only to specific neural patterns. It wasn't a file you opened. It was a feeling you relived, and you still carry Eller's neural signature in your cortex. Whether it was from shared links or something deeper, it's there, like a song caught between your thoughts. So, the archive lets you in. You descend through Enceladus's crust via a maintenance shaft that groans under pressure. Ice grinds against steel. The station hasn't been touched in years, since before the firestorm, before Earth screamed. Inside, the air is still. The temperature reads survivable, if unpleasant. The Ilari never minded the cold. Their heat came from within, in pulses and color. You always envied that. You reach the core chamber. It glows faintly with deep blue light, and the pods stand in rows like gravestones or sentinels. Most are dormant, but a few still breathe, literally. Their organic surfaces exhale mist with each pulse, like lungs dreaming beneath frost. You approach one marked in hybrid glyphs, Ilari syntax overlaid with human vowels. This wasn't here before. Someone added it. You press your hand against the surface. It's warmer than you expect. Responsive. The glyphs pulse once, and then the memories begin. Not images. Feelings. You feel Eller's awe the first time she saw Earth from orbit. Her uncertainty when she tried coffee and tasted something like bark and bravery. Her grief when a shared garden dome collapsed under faulty engineering and a dozen seedlings died, plants she'd named, humming to each before sleep. Then the feelings darken. Suspicion, isolation, the heaviness of knowing something that she couldn't speak. You feel her holding a truth like a knife too sharp to unsheath, and beneath it all, fear, but not of humans, of her own. She was part of a group, a quiet rebellion inside the Ilari caste, those who disagreed with the grand harmonies. They believed the kin accord was real, not a test, not a cycle, just hope. But they were losing. You see flashes of their meetings lit by low resonance flickers of blue and violet. Their symbol, two interlocked spirals, human and Ilari. It was never used in public. Too dangerous. Then the moment she made her choice. She sent you the warning, broke with the Accord Council, and disappeared. Some say she died shortly after. Others say she was captured, unspooled into data. But here, in this pod, her thoughts are preserved like fossils in amber. And there's one last impression. So clear it knocks the breath from your lungs. She didn't just vanish. She went into hiding here, beneath the ice with the others who believed. They had a name, the Fracture-born. And they weren't Ilari or human. They were both. You fall to your knees in the archive, the weight of it too much for Zero-G to carry. You understand now. The hybrid child wasn't the first of her kind, just the first publicly acknowledged. The Fracture-born had been among both peoples, invisible in plain sight, trying to pull the strings in favor of peace. And they failed, but not completely. The pod pulses once more and projects coordinates, new ones, far beyond the old colonies, outside charted space, a location unrecognized by Earth or Ilari databases, a final breadcrumb, a question, a challenge, a chance. You pull away. Your breath steams in the cold. The archive dims. The glyphs fade. Some galactic historians argue over whether Nar's memory was even real. Many claim the emotional interfaces were unreliable, that too much data passed through feeling ends up distorted. But you don't believe that. You believe what you felt. You believe Eller's fear, her hope, her voice, still woven into your mind like a thread spun from starlight. Some stories don't end. They evolve. You climb back up the shaft, frost biting at your fingertips, and set a new course. You don't know what you'll find at those coordinates. A grave, a lie, or the last living truth in a galaxy of fading songs. But you go, because someone has to carry the next verse. The first thing you see from Jupiter's shadow is light, not the warm, gold-tinted rays of Sol, or even the cold logic of station flood lamps, but wrong light, thin, shimmering, oily around the edges. It flickers too fast for your eyes to fully catch, like a strobe filtered through a heartbeat. This is where it started, where it ended, and where, depending on who you ask, the Ilari made their true choice. Earth's defense grid was vast. Hundreds of orbital weapon systems, smart arrays, and kinetic rail platforms that could swat meteors from the sky like flies. You helped code some of those systems. You remember writing the authentication layers by hand. You remember feeling proud. Back then, the Ilari asked to review Earth systems. Just for interoperability, they said. Safety. Backup protocols. Shared response contingencies. We let them in. Why wouldn't we? After all, they were our brothers. When the fire came, it didn't look like a war. It looked like a malfunction. Earth's orbital rings powered down in perfect sequence like a choreographed dance. Railguns retracted. Lasers dimmed. Auto-sentinels powered off one by one, whispering their shutdown codes into silence. And then, nothing. No retaliation. No warning. No way to stop what was already inside. From Jupiter's dark side, ships emerged. Not warships. Not yet. They were clean. Silent. Beautiful, even. Their design was unmistakably Ilari, shimmering lattice hulls, engines that pulsed like slow breath. They drifted toward Earth without resistance. A few orbiting satellites tried to ping them. No reply. A few smaller stations powered weapons. Manually, they locked on and then they froze. Each firing command received a rejection. The code, 0x Brotherhood lock a backdoor, written into the system, authored by someone who understood not just the software but the trust. The firestorm began exactly 73 seconds later. A beam of compressed fusion light carved across the Pacific, vaporizing oceans and punching holes in tectonic memory. Cities vanished, not exploded, disappeared. Then came the sonic triggers, low-frequency pulses that caused organic matter to rupture on a molecular level. No shrapnel, no screams, just silence. You watched the live feed from the asteroid relay, stationed near Ceres. The signal lag was 13 seconds. You remember staring at a field of clouds above South America, then blinking, and seeing nothing. Just ash, just void. No explanation came, not for days. And when it did, it came through official Ilari diplomatic channels, scrubbed of emotion and echo. This was necessary, forgive us. Nothing more. Some humans believed they were hacked, that rogue Ilari extremists had hijacked the fleet. Others argued that the Ilari simply decided humanity was no longer worth the risk. Too unpredictable, too violent, too human. You knew better. You recognized the code that disabled Earth's defense grid. You wrote part of it. Only a few keys were ever shared. One of them with Eller. During those long weeks of collaborative debugging. Back when the word trust wasn't a death sentence. That's what breaks you most. It wasn't their betrayal. It was yours, made through kindness, through openness, through hope. Galactic forums lit up with debate. Was Earth destroyed or neutralized? Was it genocide or surgical disarmament? Was it justice for the secrets buried beneath Antarctica? For the long war the public never saw? Some say Earth wasn't targeted out of hatred, but fear. That a classified project, Project Helios, was nearing completion. A solar weapon hidden in Mercury's shadow, capable of destroying planets. If it were true, then maybe the Ilari struck first. Maybe Eller knew. Maybe she didn't. But the firestorm didn't end with the oceans. It spread across Earth's orbit. Stations melted. Defense satellites turned inward and self-destructed. The moon's surface cracked beneath focused fusion bursts. You've seen the footage, frame by frame. One moment, Earth is blue. The next, not even gray. Just white. The color of heat beyond comprehension. The relay stations that survived for a few minutes longer captured fragments of the last global broadcast. The emergency override kicked in too late. It hijacked all channels, military, civilian, even entertainment. A face appeared, not a general, not a president, just a woman in her 30s, technician uniform, eyes wide with disbelief. Behind her, windows melted. She said 5 words before the feed cut. Tell them we still loved. That was it. You float now near the remnants of Earth's upper atmosphere. The debris field is thick, bone shards of steel, memory modules, broken solar panels spinning like forgotten prayers. One thing flickers among it all. A satellite. Still functional, still transmitting. You tune in. It's broadcasting a lullaby. HFY, Old Earth one. Simple melody. No words. Just hums. You used to hear it in kindergartens. Eller once asked you to translate it, curious about why it always made human children cry. You said it was because the tune meant home. You drift closer. The satellite has one message etched onto its side, now scorched and cracked. We were not ready, but we tried. Some say the Ilari destroyed Earth to prevent something worse. Others believe they feared what we could become. But maybe it wasn't fear. Maybe it was mercy. Or maybe, just maybe, it was regret. You'll never know. But you'll always remember. Because you helped build the back door. Because you trusted them, because they smiled. And then they burned your world down. There's something strange about hearing a lullaby when the Earth is gone. The melody still loops. Faint. Distant. It's been broadcasting for decades now. its signal bouncing between dead satellites and echoing off the broken shells of orbital platforms. No one's listening anymore. Not officially. But it's there. A ghost, humming itself to sleep. You leave the signal behind as you drift farther, past the densest debris, toward an old communications relay known as Halo 7. It was built to support deep space mining ops and relay signals from the outer systems. But for one shining minute, one desperate fractured moment, it became the last voice of Earth. You enter through the breach in its hull, where the outer rings twisted from an impact long ago. The airlock has no pressure, but the backup systems still glow, dim green lines along the wall. One module, deep in the belly of the station, still pulses. You power it on manually. A screen flickers, a blinking prompt. Playback, YN. You nod before you remember the interface can't see you. Then press the button. The terminal sputters, spits static, and then it begins. It's her voice again. Technician Lyricon. This time slower, controlled. A pre-recorded message. Maybe she knew she wouldn't get another chance. If you're hearing this, you survived. The first day. That alone makes you a miracle. You lean in. The room feels smaller. The final transmission from Earth wasn't meant for rescue. It wasn't a call for help. It was a seed, a record, a truth, encoded in radiation signatures and harmonic noise. It's been threaded into every broadcast since. It's in the lullaby. You blink. She continues. The Ilari didn't block our defenses. They rewrote the frequencies our minds used to recognize patterns. It was elegant, horrifying. They didn't destroy Earth with fire. They disabled us first, with sound, with empathy, with rhythm. By the time we realized it, we couldn't even pull the trigger. Your stomach turns. You've probably felt it, the way the melody itches at the back of your mind, the way memories shimmer when you hum it. That's not nostalgia, it's a lock. And we left the key in the hands of our brothers. The screen flickers once. A new window opens. Metadata. Encrypted packages. One labeled, coded, Heartline, Protocol. You remember that name. Buried deep in a joint Earth-Ilari project years before the firestorm. Supposed to be a comms booster. Enhancing emotional empathy during long-range missions. Eller worked on it. So did you. It never deployed, or so they told you. You opened the packet. Lines of code unravel across the screen. Part AI script, part biological rhythm interpreter. It's laced with harmonic triggers, pitches that map to emotional states, frequencies that bypass cognition entirely, and trigger instinctual response. Fight. Flee. Freeze. Forget. You stare at the screen and your throat goes dry. This wasn't just about disabling defense systems. It was about disabling us. The lullaby wasn't a comfort. It was a pacifier. You rewind the file. Listen again. The message ends with one final statement. We lost Earth before the first missile. We just didn't know it yet. You sit back against the cold wall. The screen flickers out. The silence returns. Galactic scholars still argue whether the Heartline Protocol was ever real. Official histories don't mention it. The Ilari say nothing now. Just silence, delivered with the polite grace of those who've already moved on. But, you remember? You helped write part of the waveform interpreter. You remember the test rats in the lunar lab falling asleep whenever the signal played. You remember joking about it. Music so good it could kill. You laughed. Now it's not funny. You leave Halo 7 behind. The signal follows you for a while, still humming. You can't turn it off. You wonder if anyone can anymore. You pass the orbital trail of the last Ark ship, the Heritage Wind. Launched just days before Earth went dark. No official logs of what happened to it. You know it was meant to carry 20,000 civilians to Proxima's new domes. The logs say it reached orbit, then silence. But the debris tells another story. You find shards of the hull, a few cryopods split open. No battle scars, no energy signatures, just a stillness that says, we were lulled, we didn't run, we just slept. There's a term, coined after Earth fell, called resonant amnesia. It's used to explain why so few survivors remember those final days clearly, why whole outposts forgot to send distress calls, why escape protocols failed. The prevailing way theory? They didn't forget. They were convinced not to remember. You drift now through a graveyard of songs knowing that what killed Earth wasn't rage. It was harmony, turned into a weapon. A kindness, corrupted. A lullaby that lulled a species into stillness just long enough for the fire to arrive. You whisper the melody softly, just to see if it still stings. It does. The descent begins without fanfare. No alarms. No glowing descent burns. No triumphant music. Just a controlled drop through the smog-thin remains of Earth's upper atmosphere. Your ship riding the magnetized remnants of a planet that no longer pulses with weather or song. Earth, if it can still be called that, is not what it was. The clouds are gone. Or rather, they've been replaced. What you see now are ash layers, hovering in the stratosphere like ghosts that forgot how to rain. Below them, the continents appear distorted, bleached, smoothed, glassed. Familiar only in outline, like an old family photo warped by heat. You aim for the equatorial band once thick with cities and green. What you find instead is a vast obsidian plain, not volcanic but vitrified. The sand melted under heat so intense it rewrote the topography. They used to call this place Kenya. Now, it's listed on old emergency star maps as Target 5A, your landing. Craft touches down with a hiss that disappears into the emptiness. No birds, no wind, just the quiet, endless whine of residual radiation. The Earth hums now like a thing recovering from a wound it doesn't remember receiving. You step onto the glass. It's beautiful, in a haunting way. The surface ripples with ancient impact patterns like frozen waves. Bits of bone and metal are suspended just below, caught mid-motion in the great fusion storm, like a diorama of the moment before the end. You begin walking. Every few kilometers you find remnants, not structures, those are long gone, but artifacts. A cooking pan, a child's shoe, a traffic light, melted but still upright, eternally. Red. You think about stopping, about burying them. But what's the ritual for a planet's grave? One of the theories, you've heard it a dozen times, suggests the Ilari didn't mean to destroy Earth entirely, that they miscalculated. The fusion wave was intended to sterilize military installations, not turn continents into memory foam. But if that's true, why target the oceans? Why burn the poles? Others say Earth was the message, not the war. A demonstration. To any other species watching, we love them. Look what we still did. You reach a crater near what once was the Congo River. It's deep, blackened at the edges, and at the center is something unexpected. A tower. Not tall, not proud, just a stump of carbon and steel rising 5 meters above the glass. And at its top, a single working light, powered by something beneath the crust, or maybe something older. You approach. There's a plaque, not metal, just carved obsidian, smoothed with precision that feels almost Ilari. But the words are human, scratched in with fury and care. We were worth more than the data. No signature, just a handprint pressed into the stone below it. You place your own over it. Doesn't match. You stand there a long time. Eventually, you circle the base of the structure, and there, facing away from the crater, is a sealed container. Scorched but intact, biometrically encoded. The lock flashes as you approach, recognizes you. It opens. Inside, a data drive. Standard Terran format circa 50 years ago. You power it on and there it is, a letter, handwritten, scanned. Digitally signed by someone you haven't thought of in years. Dr. Imani Selene, lead anthropologist, ARC project liaison, and if memory serves, the woman who once called the Ilari our mirror, not our masters. You begin to read. If you're reading this, then Earth has ended, and you came back anyway. That makes you either foolish or faithful. I envy both. We cataloged everything. Art, laughter, mistakes, our music. I made sure of it. This capsule doesn't hold our defenses or our weapons or even our politics. It holds our soul. Because that's the part they never understood. The part they never could. I don't blame the Ilari. Not entirely. Maybe we frightened them. Maybe we dared to hope too loudly. Maybe they couldn't hear our love over our noise. But if anyone, anywhere finds this, know that we loved. Not efficiently, not rationally, but fiercely. And we remembered, even as they tried to make us forget. Your hands shake. You copy the data to your ship. You seal the capsule again. You bury it in the glass just deep enough that someone else might one day feel the heat of it through their boots and start digging. You step away. Look up. The stars are dim through the ash veil, but still there. Still watching. Some say this: scarred Earth isn't a loss, but a lesson. Others whisper that this version of Earth wasn't the first to fall. But you're not here to debate. You came to remember. And now, maybe, to carry what remains. The wind returns at night. Not real wind. Not atmospheric. Earth's biosphere is too damaged to support anything more than chemical breezes now. But as you stand atop a ridge of melted glass and bone, a low resonance passes through the ruins, an echo shaped by heat-ravaged canyons and the hollow rib cages of cities long dead. It sounds like breath. A world exhaling. You've chosen your camp carefully. A small outcropping near what used to be Cairo, though nothing recognizable remains. Just subsurface tunnels and the vague hum of old Ilari tech embedded like roots in the rock. This area was never officially a battlefield, but it feels haunted. You sit cross-legged on a synthetic mat, your helmet off, air scrubbers hissing softly. The radiation is manageable here, enough for a night anyway. You've always liked being able to see the sky directly, even if it no longer smiles. You pull out the translator core from your pack, Eller's old one. It's dormant, cracked down one side. But you've kept it powered, just in case. Tonight, for the first time in years, it flickers. Faint lights across its curved wings. Not a voice, just pulses. Meaningless to anyone else. But not to you. You recognize the pattern. It's a greeting, an old Ilari code. Personal, non-standard, custom designed for private channels. Yours and Eller's. You feed it power, just enough to sustain the sequence. Then you watch as it projects a single string of characters, fragmented and corrupted but legible. I waited until they found me. Then, I am not the only one left. It's not a live message. Not now. But once, somewhere, it was. Embedded into the shell like a time-locked whisper, Eller was still alive, at least for long enough to leave this trace. You don't move. You barely breathe. After a moment, the device emits a second pulse. Sharper, more urgent. It activates. Your ship's short-range scanner and overlays coordinates into your retinal HUD. Coordinates. Beneath you. You stand. Slowly. Activate ground-penetrating sensors. There, beneath the fused strata, 3 levels down, you find the silhouette of Hilary pod buried hidden, not a war module, not a weapon, a sanctuary. You kneel and begin to cut. The process takes hours. Your tools weren't designed for glass this thick, this stubborn. But you don't stop. Not when the air grows thinner. Not when your hands start to shake. Finally, the last slab falls away, and there it is, a capsule curled into the stone like a seed in petrified soil. Its surface still glows faintly, alive. You scan it. Life signs, minimal, suspended, cryo-harmonic sleep, standard for long-term hibernation. And the DNA profile Ilari. Hybrid variants, your throat tightens, you activate the capsule's interface. It resists at first, then softens, opening to your neural tap like a hesitant friend. A soft hum fills your ears, and then, a voice. You found me. It's Eller, not live, not awake, but real. I did not know if you would come, or if you would remember how to hear me. They came for me when the fractures began, not to kill, to silence. They feared what I had seen. what I still see. We were never meant to win. Not you. Not me. We were meant to play out a story already written. But I changed the ending. The audio crackles. You lean closer. There are others, hidden, like me. Seeds buried beneath worlds burned and forgotten. Some were hybrid. Some were something more. Find them. Help them remember what love was before it was a liability. The recording ends. You rest your hand against the capsule's surface. It's warm now. Responding to presence. Reactivating protocols. She's still alive. Not just her. Others. Scattered across the ruins of empires and the silence between stars. The fracture-born. Survivors of a dream that once felt like destiny. You think back to the lullaby. To the backdoor. Code. To the stories told by victors who called themselves saviors. And you know this isn't just memory. It's resistance. Some say Earth is dead, that its last purpose was to serve as an example, a warning. But what if it's more than that? What if Earth is a seed? Galactic theorists have always debated the purpose of extinction. Natural course, cosmic balance, divine judgment. But no one ever asks the quieter question. What survives extinction? Not just life. Memory. Meaning. And maybe hope. The wind returns, curling across the glass desert with a sound like falling starlight. You lift your head and feel, for the first time in years, not alone. You don't bury this pod. You carry it toward the stars, toward whatever comes next. The journey out of Earth's gravity well is slow. You could punch the boosters, tear through the sky like a spark desperate to escape. But there's a weight in your cargo now that demands reverence. A life, a memory, a piece of a future that almost wasn't. The capsule housing Eller is cradled in the center of your ship's medbay, held in a kinetic stasis field tuned so precisely you can hear it hum. Every few hours, the pod releases a soft breath of recycled atmosphere, keeping her in the narrow band between suspension and wakefulness. You talk to her sometimes, not expecting replies, just filling the quiet. Did you ever see the sun set? Over Callisto? You ask once. It's not impressive, but it's honest. You tell her what Earth looked like from orbit, how the clouds always seemed to swirl in patterns that made you believe in something larger, even when you didn't want to. You tell her about Milo, the boy who once played wind songs through scrap, metal. You tell her that you didn't forget the meaning of the word brother, not even after they made it taste like betrayal. Your next destination is a dead moon. It doesn't have a name, just a number. L7314b. The coordinates came embedded in Eller's message. According to your charts, it was once a listening post. During the early expansion years, later marked hostile to life after a failed atmosphere trial. No one's checked it in decades. You land at dawn. Not that time matters here. The sun barely reaches this corner of space, and what does is filtered through purple haze and dust storms. The sky boils softly overhead. The ground crunches under your boots. The facility is buried, subsurface. You find the entrance half covered by rockfall and erosion, like time itself tried to erase the place. You pry it open anyway. Inside, the structure is mostly intact. Lights flicker. Gravity holds. Air is thin but breathable if you don't mind the taste of regret. Signs of life come quickly. Dried food packs, old med kits, a broken Yllari resonance harp propped against the wall like an unfinished thought. And then, motion. Your hand jumps to your sidearm. You never use it. You always hope you'll never use it. A figure steps out of the shadows, human-shaped, slender, wearing a patchwork exosuit made from old Earth fleet parts and something softer, Yllari biofabric. They raise both hands. No weapons, they say. The voice is smooth, melodic, balanced. You stare. Their face. It's both familiar and strange. Eyes too large, skin too pale with faint lines of bioluminescence trailing the veins. Not quite human. Not quite Yllari. Fracture-born? You ask. They nod. Name's Kez. You were expected. You lower your weapon, In the central chamber, there are more of them, half a dozen, maybe more. Ages range wildly, from adolescents to elders who look like they've carried entire histories on their backs. Some smile, some just stare. None speak right away. Then one steps forward. "We watched Earth fall," she says. "And we remembered what it looked like when it stood." They call themselves the Chorus, a network of fracture-born who stayed hidden waiting for a sign. For you. They show you a map, not a star chart. A web. Lines of old signal trails. Memory echoes. Forgotten code. Each node is a place where something survived. A recording, a neural imprint, a cryoseed, a dream. You recognize one of the coordinates. It's the moon base from Section 6, Theta 0. Another is Enceladus, Nar's memory, another is Earth. "You're not the last," Kez says. "You're just the first to come back. There's a room here, sealed until now. You follow them, and at its center is a device, old but unmistakably Ilari. You run your scanner. It's a recomposer, designed to read and restore fragmented memory cores. You brought her?" they ask. You nod. Eller's pod is wheeled in gently. The fracture-born work in practiced silence, linking the pod to the machine. Lights begin to pulse in that slow, familiar rhythm. You hold your breath. The recomposer begins to hum, not with static, not with code, with music, a soft melody. One you haven't heard before. Then her voice. "This is not a resurrection, it is a remembrance. I am not the same, but I am still me." The room warms by a degree. A soft breeze curls through the vents. Eller's eyes open. You drop to your knees before you realize you've moved. She stares at you, eyes adjusting. Then she blinks twice in rhythm. "I told you to choose doubt." You laugh, despite yourself. "You also told me to trust the impossible." Her smile, her light, flickers to life. It is not an end. It is not a return. It is a beginning. Some galactic historians will claim the fracture-born never existed. Others will say they died out, like myths do, leaving only songs and speculation. But you know better. You saw their hands, heard their voices, and held the proof in your arms. You stay with the Chorus for 7 days, or maybe it's 8. Time here is measured in pulse rhythms and memory cycles, not hours or sunrises. The moon never changes. The stars spin like a scratched record overhead, repeating old songs in new arrangements. Each member of the Chorus shares their fragment. One remembers the first spark of fire on an ice world when 2 enemies agreed to share body heat. Another recalls the Ilari engineer who dismantled a fusion bomb with her bare hands because the code to disable it was a joke only her human partner understood. These aren't war stories. They're bridges. Memories of what worked, when it worked. Proof that peace was more than just a hallucination we shared before waking up to war. They ask you to contribute. You hesitate. What story could you possibly offer that doesn't end in ash? Then you remember the mural on the orbital station. 2 figures holding hands beneath a blazing star. The child scrawl, "We share the light." You tell them that story, and when you're done, they don't applaud. They hum, a slow, harmonic chord that resonates in your chest. It feels like forgiveness. It feels like belonging. Eller spends most of her time interfaced with the recomposer. She's not fully awake, not yet, but each hour she returns more. A phrase, a joke. Once she sings the first line of a lullaby and asks if Earth ever figured out how it ended. You tell her, "No, but we're working on it." In the central hall, the Chorus shows you their project. A device vast and barely stable, not a weapon, a signal. It's built to undo the Heartline Protocol, Kez says, to burn out the code that tampered with memory and instinct, to unsing the lullaby. You stare at the machine. It's massive, beautiful, dangerous. "Does it work?" you ask. They shrug, nearly human. "It hasn't been tested, but we think If we send the right frequency, it'll wake more than just people. It'll wake history. You feel Eller's voice behind you. Not history, possibility. You remember the theories, the ones about recursion, mimicry, endless cycles of contact and collapse. If the chorus is right, this might be the first attempt to interrupt that cycle. Not with violence, but with remembrance. Not to fight the Yllari, to show them they are not alone in doubt, that some among them believed too, and that humanity, wounded, shattered, burned, still believes. The final piece of the device needs a carrier. Someone to take it to the old relay station at the edge of mapped space, Ravel's Edge. A lonely, spinning node between sectors, still operational, barely, but just powerful enough to amplify the transmission across the whole sector cluster. You'll only get one shot, Kez says. The moment it transmits, every listening ear in the galaxy will turn your way. Yllari included, you ask? They nod. Especially them. You don't hesitate. You volunteer. Eller watches you pack the device into your ship's core housing. She says nothing at first, then, you always ran toward fire even when you didn't have to. You smile. Somebody has to. She places her hand, bioluminescent and warm, against your chest plate. Then go, and sing louder than the silence. You launch before doubt can take root. Ravel's Edge is 3 jumps away. The path is clear. Your ship's old, but it holds. On. The second jump, you intercept a stray signal. Weak, repeating. You decode it. It's a poem, old Earth style, no author. We were built for endings, but dreamt in beginnings. We cracked the stars and still called them home. You pin it to your nav board. As you approach the station, it looms like a forgotten satellite dish aimed at eternity. Its power grid stutters. Your comms interface flashes yellow. You dock. Inside, the air is stale. The walls hum with the weight of decades. You connect the chorus's signal core to the central amplifier. It pings once, then again. Ready? You key in the harmonic override. One last message from you. A header, a title, something simple. We remember. Then you press transmit. A pulse fires outward, louder than any weapon. A song stitched from memory and longing. It carries names, faces, laughter. It carries Eller's voice. Let this not be the end. Let it be the verse between. Across the stars, something listens, and maybe, just maybe, something begins to sing back. The message echoes long after the transmission ends. You sit alone in the relay station, surrounded by blinking consoles and the low thrum of a dying power core. Outside the observation window, the stars shift ever so slightly. Tiny ripples across space-time as the pulse unfurls itself through the galaxy. It's no weapon, but it changes things. You can feel it. Somewhere out there, ships are turning. Algorithms are pausing. Beings you'll never meet are stopping mid-thought, tilting their heads toward an emotion they can't quite name. It's working. The chorus signal wasn't just harmonic correction. It was memory restoration. If the Yllari did tamper with our perception, if they rewrote instinct through sound, this was the counter chord. The dissonance designed not to destroy, but to wake. And not just humans. Because the moment it broadcasts, a second signal answers. You almost miss it. Buried beneath, carrier noise disguised as magnetic feedback. But your ship's translator pings it, barely able to parse the strange hybrid formatting. It's not quite Yllari, not quite human. You run a spectral comparison. Match, 87%. Neural pattern, familiar. The signature belongs to Hope, the child born on Titan. The first human Yllari hybrid. She was declared lost during the chaos. Her cryopod vanished during the firestorms. You remember the day the news broke. A single line. Kinseed Alpha presumed destroyed. But now? If you are hearing this, I made it. I was not the only one. Her voice is older, wiser, edged with grief, but firm. They tried to erase us, not out of malice, but fear. Our minds could hear both songs, and in that harmony they saw uncertainty. So they scattered us, hid us, told their people we never survived. But we did. The message comes with coordinates, outer rim, no trade routes, no settlements, just dust and silence. A rendezvous. Your heart doesn't race, it settles, like an orbit finally locking into place. You launch from Ravel's edge immediately. The journey is long. You cross systems where radio silence has become religion, where ruins float through gas clouds like forgotten punctuation marks in a story abandoned mid-sentence. You see things, a shipyard orbiting an invisible planet, its workers still frozen in zero-G, tools drifting beside them like metal prayers. Hillary Archive turned mausoleum, its data cores humming lullabies to no one. A derelict war cruiser with "Forgive Me" etched over its airlock in both languages. The galaxy hasn't moved on. It's just grown quieter. And then you arrive. A single station carved into an asteroid like a forgotten jewel. No lights, no beacon, but you feel the signal. It guides you to a soft landing, into a bay lit only by the ship's underglow. As your ramp lowers, you brace yourself for another message, for static, for absence. Instead, she's waiting. She doesn't look like a child anymore. Hope stands at the edge of the hangar, wrapped in a coat of woven synth light. Her eyes shimmer with layered hues, green, silver, something like starlight. And, behind her, others, a dozen, maybe more, young, old, human, Ilari, and everything in between, fracture-born. You step forward, unsure. After all this, what words are left? But she speaks first. You remembered the song. You nod. It never really left me. She smiles, genuine, unguarded. Then you're one of us. They guide you inside. The station is primitive, but elegant. Walls built from asteroid composite and memory foam designed to respond to mood. The lighting shifts as you move. Gentle green for calm, violet for reverence. You enter a central chamber. At its heart is a garden, not like the ones on Earth, but one the Ilari used to cultivate aboard their drift ships. Plants that breathe in data signals, roots that hum, leaves that pulse in time with nearby heartbeats. You sit with them, talk, share. You tell them about the mural, about the message, about Eller, and they tell you about now. Hope explains the plan, not revenge, not war, but echoes. They're sending the signal again, across broader frequencies, longer durations, layered into quantum mesh so that even if intercepted, it teaches, doesn't shout, just sings. It won't change minds, she says, but it might open them. You realize this isn't just resistance, it's evolution, a third path, not conquest, not surrender, but continuity. Some theorists will never accept this version of history. They'll demand sharp lines, clear sides, easy villains. But what you see here is a tangle of threads woven into something new. Not a tapestry, a root system. Hope looks at you one last time, as the signal begins to hum again. Will you stay? It's a choice, not a test. You look at the stars. Think of Earth, of Eller, of the children who might one day ask what it meant to be human and what it meant to be more. You nod. I'll help build the next verse. You begin the work, not the kind that can be measured in hours or metal moved or structures raised, but the kind that shifts foundations, of thought, of memory, of meaning. You help Hope and the others expand the signal arrays, not larger, smarter, modular clusters designed to harmonize, not dominate. Every frequency a question, not a command. Each ping wrapped in cultural context and tones known to bypass instinctual fear. The first wave goes out 2 days later. You sit beside a small console, watching light trails ripple across a holographic display. Each arc is a packet, a seed. A memory too complex to be decoded by logic alone. It contains images, a human child drawing stars on a Yalari's arm. It contains sounds, the laughter of engineers during a failed hydroponics setup, followed by a joke so bad it made two species giggle through translation lag, and it contains Eller's voice. Some stories were not meant to have heroes, just people trying. Across the void, a response comes. Not words, not language. Color, a pulse of blue, then green, then violet. Yllari resonance. A gesture once used only between close kin. It means, I hear you, I'm still listening. You record it, archive it, amplify it gently, feeding it back into the chorus network. Not an echo. A conversation. The chorus doesn't lead, it curates. Their role is now as stewards of potential. They offer frameworks, not answers. Maps, not destinations. They don't tell people what to believe. They just remind them they once believed in something. Eller, still recovering, spends hours in the garden now. Her light is brighter, her jokes worse. You're not sure if that's a Yllari survival trait or just her. You walk with her once along the outer catwalks, staring down at the planet below. It's no longer Earth, but it still turns, still reflects light, still spins stories into the sky. Do you ever regret it? She asks. You know what she means, letting them in. Trusting them. Building something fragile with open hands. You consider it. No. I regret that we stopped. She nods. So, let's not. You agree. One morning, subjective time, you wake to find that a new signal node has gone live. Ravel's Edge. You thought it was dead, abandoned after the transmission. But someone rebooted it. Restored power. The chorus didn't do it. You didn't. Someone else heard the call and answered. Within hours, more stations light up. A trade hub near Leuten's Gate, a scientific outpost long thought dormant near Glisa. Even at Yllari Garden Moon, once scorched by orbital fire. The galaxy is stirring, not fully, not fast, but enough. The chorus begins sending envoys, not ambassadors, listeners, each trained to carry stories, not sides. Some are fracture-born, some are baseline human. A few, surprisingly, are Yllari who broke away from the silence. There's a child among them, barely 10 years old. Human Yllari asks too many questions. Taps rhythms on every surface. You teach them the old tune from Halo 7. The lullaby. They hum it back, slightly wrong, slightly new, better. One night, as you're checking external sensors, a message pings your console. Simple. No metadata. Just one line. We are still out here. You don't recognize the signature, but you recognize the cadence. It's from the perihelion blue, the lost freighter, a ghost returning home. You forward it to the chorus. Add a note. Maybe this story isn't over. Maybe it never was. Galactic. Historians may never agree on what happened to Earth, whether it was betrayal, misunderstanding, or inevitability. Some will insist it was a cautionary tale. Others will call it a rebirth. But here, on this lonely moon, among hybrids and harmonies, you don't worry about definitions. You just build. You write a new song, and you let it drift, like pollen, into the stars. Outside your viewport, the stars stretch out like a promise, soft, endless, and unhurried. The hum of the station fades to a background whisper, like a lullaby you've finally outgrown but still remember in your bones. Eller sleeps nearby. Not cryo, just rest. The garden emits soft pulses. The child, Curie she calls herself now, has left drawings taped to your wall. One of Earth, one of the mural, one of you and her, holding hands in front of a star that shines a little crooked. You leave them up. They are reminders, not of what was lost, but of what survived. The universe remains vast, complex, imperfect. There will be more betrayals, more silence, more fire, perhaps. But now there are voices ready to sing before it gets that far. There are listeners, carriers of memory and dreamers, humming new songs into the void. The galaxy no longer spins alone. It remembers. It questions. It hopes, and maybe, just maybe, that's enough. You lower the lights. Let the resonance of the hull settle around you like a blanket. You close your eyes. The story drifts on. The next verse will come. Sleep now, traveler. You've done enough. You are enough.